Joining us now, NBC Sahil Kapoor reporting from Capitol Hill. Mark Leibovich is staff writer at The Atlantic. Eddie Glaude is Princeton University professor and an MSNBC political analyst. And Charlie Sykes, author of the Substack newsletter To the Contrary and an MSNBC political analyst. Welcome, everybody. Eddie, you don't have to watch all 90 minutes of 700 people booing and yelling to feel this extraordinary level of frustration, even anger at that town hall. Congressman Flood was called a fascist. He was called a liar in a state that Trump won by almost 12 points. So how high is the hill Republican leadership is asking their members to climb when they tell them, go out into your districts, sell the big, beautiful bill?
Well, it's up there with Mount Rushmore, I guess. It's pretty high. The altitude is pretty high for sure. It seems to me that, a lot of voters are coming to terms with the implications of the quote unquote big, beautiful bill. That is going to impact their lives concretely. It's going to impact their bottom line. It's going to impact how they take care of their children, how they put food on the table, how they pay their bills, how they ensure that the people that they love, right, are secure, and how they take care of the ones who are sick. And so I think, we can think about this within the context of, the culture wars and all of that stuff, owning the libs. But when it comes to this bill, Chris, it comes down to how folk are going to live their lives. And it's touching people already. And there's more harm to come. And I think people see that on the horizon.
Yeah, I think, Mark, this was Congressman Flood's third town hall this year. The local newspaper, the Lincoln Journal-Star, says he encountered his fiercest backlash yet. I mean, you have to wonder if there is a tipping point with the level of vitriol that might even concern the White House.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I do give Congressman Flood some credit for actually standing up there because, like many of his colleagues, he's actually, doing these town meetings. And like most. Yeah. I mean, so he is sort of putting himself out there. It doesn't look like a lot of fun, and it doesn't look like these pictures are going to encourage a lot of his colleagues to change course on this. This will, I think, if anything, probably put them even more in a bunker away from these things. So, I mean, there's that. I think on the other hand, though, this isn't just a big, beautiful bill thing. I mean, obviously, that's not playing well. But as you see from the video here, I mean, this is bleeding into immigration. This is bleeding. I mean, there was some other stuff about Epstein. I mean, this is sort of a larger sort of cry from, I think, the resistance that is an indication of how energized resistance to Trump is at this point.
Yeah, Charlie, I think one of the biggest topics, without a doubt, was Medicaid. And the National Review reports House GOP leaders are urging members to say they voted to strengthen Medicaid with new work requirements and eligibility checks. It's something that we actually saw the congressman try to argue last night. Take a listen.
There's been a lot of misinformation out there about the bill. So when you talk about Medicaid, I can tell you we're going to see an influx of money into Nebraska hospitals. I truly believe this bill protects Medicaid for the future. We protected Medicaid. We protected Medicaid.
Well, here's the thing that organizations representing hospitals say rural hospitals in Nebraska will close. You also have Donald Trump, who said repeatedly, we're not going to touch this stuff. How do you sell something when the president promised the opposite?
Yeah, this is obviously a very, very tough sell for Republicans, particularly this summer when there's so many other distractions. Look, this was supposed to be the summer in which Republicans turned public opinion around and convinced people of all the good stuff that was in the big, beautiful bill. I mean, number one, you're seeing how difficult it is to make that case. Number two, the reality is that most people are not focused on this legislation. And what you're seeing there is real frustration and real mobilization of the resistance. Now, it is important as a reality check to remember that Mike Flood was reelected last year with more than 60% of the vote. He was originally elected in a special election where he only got about 53% of the vote. So he is in a safe Republican district, but this is the kind of thing you have to keep an eye on. Is the wave against the what's going on in Washington, is it strong enough that it could take out somebody who has 60% of the vote? Because again, you know, one of the things the Republicans are counting on, I know you're going to be talking about this, is they're counting on the fact that most Republicans are not really at risk because they're not in competitive districts. So guys like Mike Flood can go out there and they can absorb some of that, confident that they have strong majorities. But you are seeing how difficult it is to go out. And to Mark's point, that video is probably going to dissuade a lot of Republicans from holding town hall meetings over the next few months.
And of course, Mark, Charlie's right. I mean, this is a guy in a very safe district. Having said that, there was a Nebraska state government report that says Medicaid serves 18% of Nebraskans. So there's a really good chance that of the 700 people at that meeting last night, either someone there or someone they know or someone they love depends on Medicaid, right? So you do wonder about the level of confidence. How fraught is it for any politician to stand on a stage? And again, kudos to him for standing on that stage. But to tell constituents you can't trust your own knowledge and experience or what experts in your state are telling you.
Yeah, I mean, after a while, you sort of have to wonder, I mean, well, there was an election last November, and this is what Americans voted for, is kind of the catch-all answer to all of these things. I mean, that's not really very effective at this point. I mean, that has, I mean, maybe it has some value for a while, but not after year. So, I mean, I think at this point, obviously Medicaid voters and people who are affected directly by this are an extremely passionate voting bloc. But I think, again, it does seem to go well beyond that. And I mean, the reflexive Republican defense of like a scene like that last night is, oh, you know, this is billionaire, like liberal funded, you know, resistance, they're busting and so forth. You know, it is somewhat unclear what the makeup of the crowd was, how many of it was organized, how much of it was organized, how much of it was from out of district and so forth. But clearly, you know, between Medicaid, between immigration, between what's in the big, beautiful bill, and so forth. I mean, this is an energized group. And again, it's part of what I think Republicans are going to have to face in the next few months.
Yeah, Sahil, not only last night, but Congressman Flood has done 3 of these. He also said this would be his last, but he has done 3 in person. There are, 219 Republicans in the House? Are most of them doing what Republican leadership has said to them, which is don't do these in-person town halls?
Mostly, yes, Chris. The vast majority of Republicans are heeding those calls and avoiding town halls. We're only aware of a handful of Republicans who are doing in-person town halls this year, and most of them are in safe red districts where they face little or no risk of losing to a Democratic candidate. Democrats, for their part, have been willing to do more town halls in person this year, and the energy in this town hall revealed why. The issues that are resonating tend to be, or rather the people who are trying to show up to these events tend to be more on the liberal side. Just in this town hall, we saw a few instances of that. Mike Flood got a question about expanding Medicare to all ages. Which is not something you often hear Republican members get questioned about. He said simply, we can't afford it, and he got booed by the crowd. There was a tax the rich chant when he was talking about the tax breaks for tips and overtime pay in the big, beautiful bill. That's a huge, a section of the measure that the White House wants to focus on. There was even a free Palestine chant when Flood was grilled about U.S. support for Israel as the death toll in Gaza rises. In addition, Chris, there were some tension points here that Republicans are going to have to grapple with between Trump and their own MAGA base, one of which is Medicaid. A lot of the Medicaid cuts and work requirements will affect working class Trump voters, including in red states, including in rural areas. Mike Flood talked about a rural hospital fund to try to mitigate some of the damage. But the impact will still be felt. And there was another question from one town hall attendee who demanded to know why he was, quote, covering up the Epstein files, unquote, an issue that Republicans will have to deal with when they come back. All that said, Congressman Flood did hold his ground, and he took the questions, which many of his colleagues are refusing to do. This is a fairly safe red seat, and that gives you an indication of why people like him are more willing to do this than those in competitive areas.
And we've covered this a lot, just to say the fact rural hospital fund, by every expert calculation, will not cover the losses that these rural hospitals will face. But Eddie, when you watch this town hall and the handful of others, there was one just last Friday, are we watching democracy at work? And if Congress is not going to stand up for their constituents, will it come down to real people defending their own interests, defending democracy, defending the idea that the people you elect into office are representing you, your needs, your concerns?
Well, Chris, on the one hand, we are witnessing democracy at work, but also we have to understand, and you're going to talk about this a bit later, the impact of gerrymandered districts. That, in some ways, if you have these, scarlet red districts and these deep blue districts, elected representatives don't really have to worry about whether or not they're going to be reelected if they're going to have a substantive challenge. And so even though we see everyday ordinary people voicing their concerns, expressing their desires for policies that will speak to their kitchen table issues, we know that they're kind of structural realities that impact how their voices can be heard or how seriously they would be taken. And so I think it's really important for us to understand the calcified nature of our politics, not the polarized nature, but the calcified nature. That is, it's not just simply hyperpartisan. You have folk who are just baked into their positions, and even if they disagree with their representatives, it's not as if they're just going to go and vote Democratic now, because that's not consistent with who they take themselves to be. So we're in this really, really vexed and fraught point in our politics, Chris.